On July 23, 2000, TAP Portugal Flight 236 took off from Lisbon, heading toward Porto. What was supposed to be a routine flight turned into one of the most astonishing survival stories in aviation history. It was midnight, and the aircraft was cruising at an altitude of 39,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. Pilots face this situation every day, and there was nothing abnormal in it. But just minutes after takeoff, tragedy struck. An unexpected fuel leak caused the aircraft to lose most of its fuel supply mid-flight. Remarkably, the Airbus A330 continued to glide, powered only by gravity, over the Atlantic Ocean, with no engine power. This is where the story of survival truly begins. It was a very scary situation for the two pilots because running out of fuel over the Atlantic Ocean means only one thing, and that is death. Flying without engine power is an extraordinary situation. The pilots had to rely on their skill, quick thinking, and a bit of luck to bring the aircraft safely to the ground. Now, this issue wouldn't normally be considered so serious. Miraculously, the crew managed to navigate the aircraft toward the Azores, an archipelago of Portuguese islands, aiming for the narrowest landing strip. And within minutes, the fuel quantity in both wings had become equal again. Just 10 minutes later, the captain started receiving a low fuel warning. This was the kind of issue no pilot wants to face, especially on a plane full of passengers. The pilot noticed that the fuel in the right wing had decreased again. And now, even when combining the fuel from both wings, there wasn't enough to reach Lisbon. There were very limited options available for diverting the plane in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, they had only one option, and that was Azores Island. These islands are part of Portuguese territory in the Atlantic Ocean, where there is an airport on the island named Terceira. With precise flying, the pilots executed a controlled descent and landing on the short runway, an incredible feat of airmanship, without engine power. All 144 passengers and crew survived, their lives saved by the extraordinary bravery and expertise of their pilots. The captain contacted Santa Maria ATC in the first place and informed them that they were going to land at that airport due to fuel shortage. But the pilot still wasn't sure whether they would be able to reach that airport or if they might have to land in the ocean. At that time, the aircraft had approximately 7 tons of fuel left, which is around 7,000 kilograms. While it might seem like a lot, in reality, it was only around 6% of the A330's fuel capacity. A decrease in fuel can only occur in one situation. There might be a fuel leak happening somewhere. To find out, the captain gave instructions to the flight crew to go and monitor the trailing edge of the wing. If there is a fuel leak, then surely there will be an indication from there. But due to the darkness, the crew could not find any such indication. Now, the condition was that 1 ton of fuel was depleting every 5 minutes. Now, it is clear to the captain that the fuel is leaking from somewhere. They now had only 25 minutes worth of fuel left. During this time, it was not even possible to reach Terceira Airport. Meanwhile, the captain and first officer were continuously in contact with the maintenance unit and ATC. The maintenance unit gave instructions to the captain to descend the aircraft from 39,000 to 20,000 feet to confirm the fuel leakage. But the captain declined to do so, as they believed that even if the fuel leakage was confirmed, it wouldn't be possible to ascend the aircraft back up. At least they still have the option of gliding at 39,000 feet for now. In the next few minutes, all doubts were dispelled when a fire erupted in the right engine of the aircraft. Upon seeing this, panic spread throughout the aircraft, and the clouds of fear swept away the tranquility of passengers who had been peacefully asleep. The aircraft now had about 4.5 tons of fuel left and only one engine remaining. With just one engine, it was not possible to continue cruising, so a gradual descent in altitude began. On the other hand, emergency was declared at Terceira Airport. Fire trucks and emergency crews initiated their preparations to handle any kind of situation. The aircraft, which was still 240 kilometers away from Terceira Airport, now had only 600 kilograms of fuel remaining. In the meantime, what was feared happened because the left engine caught fire due to running at full thrust. And now Flight 236 began gliding over the Atlantic Ocean without engines. Here, the captain's decision not to drop the aircraft to 20,000 feet proved to be absolutely correct. Due to the shutdown of both the engines, it is now dark inside the plane because the electrical system of the plane also runs due to the engine. Fortunately, the automatic turbine of the plane came out, which generates only enough electricity from the airspeed to power the important equipment of the cockpit. Now Terceira Airport was 120 kilometers away, and the aircraft had descended to 30,000 feet, and the captain had to cross this distance only by gliding. The darkness and pin-drop silence in the passenger cabin had created an atmosphere of fear, such silence that perhaps signaled an impending disaster. The worst-case scenario was that if the aircraft couldn't reach the airport, it would have to land in the ocean. For this reason, the crew began preparing the passengers for a potential water landing. Landing in the ocean is dangerous in every way, because even if the passengers survive the impact, they may drown in the water, and if they do not drown in the water, they may die of hypothermia due to the cold water. Now, normally, it is very difficult to glide a passenger plane without engines. Everything was dependent on the plane's pitch control, which the pilot was manually controlling using the stick. The altitude of the plane was dropping at the rate of 2,000 feet per minute, which means that in the next 15 minutes, the plane will either reach the airport or end up in the ocean. When the distance of the plane was 15 kilometers from Terceira Airport, its altitude was 13,000 feet, and normally, at such a distance, the altitude should be around 3,000 feet. Now, if the pilot lowers his altitude by performing a nosedive, the speed of the plane will be very fast, and in this situation, the possibility of crash landing is very high. That's why the pilot decided to perform a 360 degrees turn right there. Once the turn was completed, the distance from the airport remained the same, while the altitude had dropped to 5,000 feet. This altitude was still high, but not high enough to make another 360 degrees rotation. Therefore, the pilot aligned the plane's position with the runway and executed a series of S-turns. Due to the S-turns, the plane's distance from the runway increased, and it got more time to lower its altitude. In normal conditions, during landing, flaps are extended to create drag, and engine thrust is increased, causing the plane's nose to pitch up. But Flight 236 did not have engine thrust. That's why this landing was very different from normal landing and very dangerous. The pilot had only one chance to land the plane, either make it or break it. From the brink of disaster to an almost impossible survival, Flight 230 XS story reminds us that sometimes hope and skill can turn tragedy into a miracle. Thank you for watching. Remember, in the face of adversity, the human spirit soars higher than ever.